Hello and welcome. You're watching Business Plus here on News 9 Live. I'm Krishna Kumar and I'm being joined in the studios by my colleague and friend Karthik Malhotra. And we begin this edition of Business Plus, Karthik, this Thursday morning edition, by talking about the sales of cars and bikes in this country, isn't it?
Absolutely, Krishna. And I think, the first working day of every month is like this big headline day that you wait for the numbers of the previous month to show up.
Yep.
And if you remember earlier, we've been working together for so many years. Earlier, there was a great consensus that every time you spoke auto numbers, it was a reflection of the health of the economy. But I feel now auto numbers surpass those expectations on economic growth multiple times over. It's no longer just a state of the economy. I think it's a state of aspirations. It's a state of the faith that the citizens of the country have in assured income coming their way month after month to take the kind of loans they are taking. So it's not just the auto story we are focusing on today, but rather we'll try and put into perspective how auto numbers are so contrary to, let's say, employment numbers,
Manufacturing
numbers, and also the fact that, you have economic growth targets. If auto were to continue reflecting that, then year on year, month on month, we would be seeing GDP double, if not triple.
Okay. That's a great note to start the show off with. So let's talk about the car and bike sales numbers for the month of October 2023. They have surpassed, they are soaring. Let me quickly take you through those numbers, Karthik. Let's look at those numbers. First up, I'm going to talk about the biggest car maker, the auto company in this country, and that is Maruti. Maruti's October sales was an all-time high, the highest ever monthly sales number. Total sales, domestic sales, this doesn't include the exports, 1.77 lakh units being sold. That's a growth of over 20%, double-digit growth in Maruti Suzuki's domestic sales. This is October 23 we're talking about. Mini and compact segment of Maruti, that's where the dip has been, 3.5%. But bear in mind, they still sold nearly 1 lakh mini and compact cars. So don't let this red arrow mislead you. But look at that. Whatever they lost in mini and compact segment, the utility vehicle segment, the SUVs of all shapes and sizes, they're up 91% to nearly 60,000 SUVs that only Maruti Suzuki India has sold for the month of October. Imagine the total number of SUVs being sold in this country by all big auto players. Total exports for Maruti, nearly 22,000. That's up around 7.5%. So all green show for Maruti. Just a 3.5% dip in mini and compact segment sales, but that's overcompensated in terms of SUV sales. Talking about the confidence of the Indian consumer all over again. That's what Karthik was talking about. This is a reflection of the confidence of the Indian consumer, not the export numbers, but the overall auto numbers from Maruti Suzuki. Let's also talk about the other ones. The big auto players. After Maruti, we have Tata Motors. Tata Motors is total sales up nearly 6% to, again, 83,000 units from the Tata Motors stable. That's all cars that we're talking about. And Tata Motors has also entered the SUV segment. Maruti was a laggard. It's catching up right now. Domestic sales for Tata Motors up 6% to over 80,000 units being sold. So Tata Motors also doing extremely well as far as its domestic sales are concerned and total sales are concerned. Exports as well. Passenger vehicle sales, 48,300 units, up 7%. Passenger vehicle sales alone, because bear in mind, Tata Motors has a huge gambit of auto products that it offers. So specifically passenger vehicle sales, and why are we talking about it? That's what the Indian consumer is buying. If the sentiment check of the Indian consumer is concerned, very confident, very sure, wanting to go out there and buy cars, wanting to go out there and buy SUVs, for God's sakes. Total sales of M&M, India's premier car maker, at 80,000 odd units, up 32%, double-digit growth for M&M in the month of October. Bear in mind, all these numbers are so great because it is the festive season after all. Domestic sales for M&M, again, up 35% to nearly 44,000 units being sold by M&M. And again, the famous M&M SUVs, utility vehicle sales, up 36%. 43,700 odd units is what they have sold. So great numbers. Exports dipping a little bit. Bear in mind, the numbers aren't all that different, 2,700 to 1,800. But that 33% dip in exports compensated by a double-digit growth in domestic sales here in India. M&M too doing extremely well. Bear in mind, this is largely a diesel car company and just entering into the electric vehicle sector and still continue to do well. Hyundai, there you go, 18% growth in total sales, double-digit growth across the board. If you see, nearly 68,000 800 units is what Hyundai has sold. Bear in mind, this South Korean giant has been in this country for more than 3 decades. Domestic sales alone is over 55,000 units, up 15%, and exports too up 36%. Hyundai's India units exports are going up in double digits. It's a great shot in the arm for Make in India. I can never say that enough. This is a testament to Hyundai, a South Korean giant's presence in this country. And during festive season, it's able to up its exports as well. MG Motors, the final of the car companies that we're taking, over 5,000 units sold, 17% growth. MG Motors doesn't sell cheap cars, they sell premium cars, and there too, you're seeing a great growth in demand. October demand was expected to be huge. It is finally proving itself to be huge. Bear in mind, this time around we have Diwali in the middle of November. So this demand surge could continue in the month of November as well. From four-wheelers to two-wheelers, Bajaj Auto, 19% up, nearly over 4,70,000 bikes being sold by Bajaj Auto overall, and nearly 2,80,000 bikes being sold by Bajaj Auto in India alone. That's a growth of 35%. So it's not just the car sales. The Indian consumers' confidence is being able to, you can see it in the bike sales as well, which means a lot of rural demand is coming in for India's auto sector. So that is Bajaj Auto, and the other big two-wheeler maker in this country, Hero Moto, total sales up 26%, again double digits, to nearly 5,30,000 units being sold just for the month of October. 5,30,000 bikes have been sold by Hero MotoCorp. So that is a wrap-up of how both four-wheeler and two-wheeler sales in this country have been. So let me just take this back to Karthik then. Karthik, it's very simple.
Mind-boggling, isn't it?
Mind-boggling numbers.
20%, 30%, 35%, 91%. The SUVs of Maruti 800, month on month, they've almost doubled the number of cars they sold in October versus what they sold in September.
It's incredible. And the thing is that Maruti is a late entrant into the SUV segment.
Absolutely.
They've been iffy about entering it.
Yeah.
But the moment they enter it, they're able to bring the house down.
Carpet bomb the whole road, carpet bomb the whole country with SUVs.
We just had, we have, the Maruti's SUV customers amongst us. We have, Suyash with a Jimny, and Jimny is selling really well. You're talking about Maruti's entry. It's shaking up the business at its core, which means that Tata Motors is watching.
Yeah.
All the other companies are watching. The laggard, the slowest to enter the SUV space, is killing it in the month of October. But we'll go back to the point you made, Karthik. All of these great numbers about car and bike sales essentially means that it's a show of the confidence of the consumer economy of India and the consumer's faith in India's economy.
Absolutely. But Krishna, again, multiple questions that remain unanswered. And look at it in subsequent stories as we move forward. We'll see how unemployment has actually increased in the month of October versus September. We will see how loan and the demand for loan is coming more from tier 3 and tier 2 cities as compared to metro or non-metro tier 1 cities. Now, overall, the point I'm trying to drive home, since we're talking about an auto company or an auto industry data, is the fact that, there is definitely this clear pivot from shared mobility to owned mobility. There is a clear pivot to new cars versus second-hand cars, which was the fad as we were just getting out of the COVID, 3-year lull period. Now, there is also this renewed assurance that I will find a job, I will find a way to continue making a living, I will be able to service my EMI, and even though the interest rates are high, we are in a high interest rate cycle, it doesn't seem to bother me. I still want to go own a ride, drive it. Petrol prices, diesel prices notwithstanding, EV charging infrastructure notwithstanding, I think the auto story in India is pretty much defying gravity and defying every other economic parameter out there by leaps and bounds.
Right. Karthik, you're a Punjabi, I'll just say that, Indians like their gaddis, for sure. So, for God's sake, north to south, east to west, and you're rightly pointing out, especially post-pandemic, there is a renewed interest to own your own ride, because people realize what it was to be in the pandemic and not have a ride of your own. So you're so dependent, so vulnerable as far as your own mobility is concerned. So definitely that there is that push over there. But again, the only point here we want to tell all those people as we're talking about the confidence of this economy is that all the other data that has come out in the last 24 hours, again, they have not been great. The PMI manufacturing data has not been great. Unemployment data has not been great. And let's face it, we're still dealing with our own current account deficit woes, which we need to, sort of make up going forward, isn't it?
5, even though it is at an 8-month low, it is still in the positive territory. So PMI, I would not worry about too much. I think PMI on the services side, when that comes in, that is something I would want to watch a little more closely, given the kind of headcount losses, job losses that we've seen in the IT sector. So that is as far as PMI goes.
Headcount losses, job losses. Let's move on to that next story that we want to talk about. There is just not enough employment for the young people of India, especially the first time and second time job goers in this country. And that's what at least data tells us.
Yeah, so I think the CMIE data which has been released, and this data also gets released every month. In fact, a little difference between how the government releases unemployment data and how CMIE, a private research agency, releases data. And economists around the board have started preferring using CMIE data versus the official data that comes out from the government of India. Now, in the month of October alone, 10 million new entrants got added to the workforce. And in the month of October, we have actually seen our unemployment rate come down to a 2-year low, and we are back in double digits, in excess of 10%. So we were in double digits, and this was a story we would discuss almost, every day. We would write about it every day during the pandemic on how the pandemic had snatched away jobs, and double-digit unemployment rates were a cause of concern right until May 2021, which was pretty much the last time that we had seen at an overall rural plus urban level unemployment touching double digits. We may still want to pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, US has an unemployment rate of maybe about 17-18%. China has an unemployment rate of about 20%. So compared to us being the fastest growing economy, compared to other two large economies of the world, US and China, we are in a better position. But the fact of the matter is that we are back in double-digit unemployment numbers, and this divide between rural unemployment and urban unemployment is fairly stark. Look at the graphics behind you, Krishna. You'll see that, we have, ever since the start of this calendar year, we have seen, even though we've gone up to 8.5 in the month of June, we've seen a broad range of about 7.5, 7.75. Look at the month of October, we are at 10.05%. Bang, double digit, no respite at all. And we try to dig into understanding what led to this sort of
and it's
divide.
10+% for both urban and rural.
Exactly. So if you look at rural has actually spoiled the average. Rural has, the unemployment rate is directly linked to monsoon, and we saw a bad monsoon this year. Now, bad monsoon has taken away rural jobs to begin with. But this has, of course, overcompensated for the job losses in urban. Let's look at the urban data, and urban data now coming at about 7.8% or so. I feel on the back of, like I mentioned, the IT job losses. So 8.4% urban unemployment. We've seen IT 50,000 odd IT jobs, 52,000 if I remember correctly, lost among just the top 10 IT firms of India. Infosys leading the pack, followed by Wipro. Now the point is, you have 10 million people added on a monthly basis. You're talking about 1 crore people added in the month of October. That's a huge number. India's median age today is 28 years. The maximum number of people in India today are at an age of 28 years. And these people need jobs. These people need employment. Now, even though we say that we will grow at 6%, 6.5%, the rate of explosion of the middle class, the rate of explosion of first jobbers is much higher than 6.5. So 6.5%, 7% economic growth is not going to cut it when it comes to making sure everybody across the board is employed.
Right. That's the story as far as India's employment data is concerned. Karthik, you're talking about Infosys and Wipro cutting jobs, and all I can think of is that the reason why Infosys wants people to work 70 hours a week, lesser number of people, more hours per person?
And now Infosys, I mean, that was Mr. Narayan Murthy in his personal capacity, but now Infosys is also saying 10 out of 30 days come work from office. Remember, TCS has changed it to 30 out of 30 days or whatever, 23 working days depending on the month. So Infosys is now telling its employees that, okay, I mean, it hasn't really commented on what Narayan Murthy had said in his personal capacity, but saying 10 days in a month come work from office. So I think, yeah, that is also a tectonic shift which is happening, again, on the back of lower headcount, fewer people, to do the amount of work that is to be done. So at least make sure you're not Netflixing and chilling at home and you're actually coming to office and
really
working.
Feels like, all of this reminds me of school, Karthik, and all the different methods that our teachers devised so that we stay in class, pay attention in class, do our classwork, do our homework. This really feels like that for adults. This is
so I think work from home was permanent homework. Work from office is okay, at least a split between work a little from here, go back and work a little more.
And being in media and doing the gig that I do, I never understood what was work from home all about, because we all had to be in office.
I'll tell you, it was added work because you spend more time in office because there were some functions which were unable to operate from office. So you spent on an average 16, 17 hours. Mr. Murthy would be happy.
Yeah, Mr. Murthy would be happy. But guess who is not exactly happy with the money that people are making? And that is the people themselves. The average salaried class in this country does not have enough money with its salary. And how do we know this? We know this because if you have a salary, you will get a loan. That's the deduction we could make because of the growth of personal loans in this country, Karthik. I mean, anybody who's salaried seems to be taking a personal loan these days.
A, that. B, I think it is easier for a salaried person to get access to a loan. So lenders across the board are more forthcoming when they have to lend to a salaried employed versus a self-employed, somebody who's either in the gig economy or is doing something on the side and not really has a pay slip to show. So there are fewer rejections and there are faster approvals for those who have an assured income month on month. The same guys who are buying the cars that we were talking about earlier, right?
So apparently, Karthik, we are in a country where people take personal loans to buy iPhones. So,
So, yeah, I think so credit rating plays a very, very critical part in helping lenders decide who to lend to and who not to lend to. And on an average, salaried employees have a far greater credit rating than those who are self-employed, and some of those numbers are quite staggering. So 29% of salaried individuals have got up to 5 credit accounts. Compare this to about 23 of non-salaried. Almost a quarter of the salaried employees have a credit score of over 770, and that is, of course, the 5-star rating when it comes to your credit worthiness. And this compared to just about 19% or so when it comes to those who are self-employed. So one side of the story is just this, that the salaried class is finding easier access, faster access, fewer rejections when they go out and seek loans, and loans of all kind, home loan, auto loan, personal loans for buying iPhones or otherwise. The second part of the story is that the real queries are coming for loans are coming from tier 3 and tier 2 cities. This pretty much corroborates the CMIE data also, that rural unemployment is much higher than urban unemployment, and tier 3, not technically rural but at the cusp of rural and urban, is seeing a much higher demand and a much higher query rate for seeking loans as opposed to those who are living in metros and non-metros. So non-metros overall, the demand has dipped actually from about 75 to 55% in the last 4 years, whereas the tier 3 cities, the demand for loan has gone up from 27% odds to about 45%.
Fascinating, Karthik. All I can think of is that this is what I would call as a classic bittersweet scenario. Yes, the access to credit, the fact that there's so much access to credit is very good, which wasn't the case, say, 20 years ago, which is a very good thing. So you need that cash. There's a place to go get it. But what is bitter over here is the fact that, the levels of unemployment, the levels of salaries are low enough for people to continuously keep borrowing. And the fact that tier 2, tier 3 cities are coming in, that's where India believes that you should never, aaj nakad kal udhar. You don't want credit. You're not supposed to take credit. It's a traditional Indian mindset of you spending your own money.
So, Krishna, I think, I have a slightly different take on that. And while I agree, there is perhaps some reading within that data to suggest that there isn't enough money in the hands of the employed salaried class as well as perhaps the self-employed, and hence they need to take a loan. But I think if you're taking a loan to build a house, if you're taking a loan for any sort of capital investment, it's good. We've seen that overall savings have also dipped over the last many years. India right now has very few savings as compared to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, as you spoke about. But the fact that you're taking a loan and you're building an asset, and that asset is going to appreciate, is overall better for you and is overall better for the economy because there is more economic momentum.
Fair enough. Fair point over there, Karthik. But quickly we'll move on to the other story. We're ending the last minute of Business Plus, and that is the fact that we'll still keep it to the salaried people in the country. They need laptops to work. their kids need laptops to study, and it looks like India is importing billions dollars worth of laptops.
And again, the timing, Krishna, if you remember, 1st of November was the deadline after which anybody who wanted to import laptops into India needed the government's approval. And then last week, the government came around and said that, hey, we are not putting a ban on laptop imports. You can go ahead and import laptops. Just keep us informed. Tell us where you're importing from and who you're importing from and how much. Now, 111 applications were with the government of India to DGFT specifically to import hardware, IT hardware, laptops, tablets, PCs, everything. 110 out of them, 110 out of 111 have been given a go-ahead. So only one rejection. So I think all those fear-mongering, some of that we had also voiced on our shows with some industry experts saying that the government wants to go back to license Raj, government wants to restrict import, government wants to arm twist manufacturers to make in India, to sell in India.
Clearly
Seems to have at least been relaxed for now. Only one rejection, that one rejection on account of that particular company being in the denied entity list, and that denied entity could be on, for tax violation or, paperwork, books not adding up, etc. And the value, you started with the value of imports, the import orders that India has placed, these 110 companies put together, is as much as $10 billion. Last year, our total IT hardware import into India was $8.8 billion. On 1st of November, we've placed import orders worth $10 billion. So a huge story there. Just one more point. I think there were apprehensions about Chinese companies, right? Let's
correct.
not leave that unnoticed. 2 Chinese companies, including Xiaomi and Lenovo, are also part of those 110 who have been given approval to import laptops.
Very important last point over there. 2 Chinese companies among the 110 companies being given the go-ahead by Indian government to import $10 billion worth of laptops and PCs. And with that, we've completely run out of time on this edition of Business Plus. Thank you, Karthik, for being with us this morning and putting all the big stories into perspective. We wrap up this edition of Business Plus. We'll be back with Global Business Report on the other side. Don't go anywhere. Keep it with News 9 Live.
Chat GPT. It can generate codes and human-like responses through text